It's 6:58 on a Thursday morning, and you're standing at Pump 4 of the marathon on Route 9, watching the numbers climb past $38. Your gray Civic has 161,000 miles on it. The check engine light has been on for 11 months. You've stopped checking what it means. Behind you, a Silverado pulls in, jacked up, chrome exhaust tips, the kind of truck that turns heads in a gas station parking lot at 7 in the morning. The guy driving it works 2 cubicles down from you. His name is Marcus. He waves. You wave back. Marcus's truck payment is $687 a month. Your brokerage account crossed $164,000 last week. Nobody at this gas station knows that. Not even Marcus. Here's the contradiction. You could afford the truck. You've done the math more than once, usually at red lights, usually without meaning to. What you can't quite explain, not even to yourself, not yet, is why you don't want it. This isn't a story about being frugal. It's a story about what happens when you stop needing people to know. It starts 3 years earlier, in an apartment with a mattress on the floor and $214 in checking. You're 24. The apartment is 480 square feet, and the mattress is still on the floor because the bed frame felt like a purchase for a version of you that didn't exist yet. Payday is Friday. You open the app before you've even gotten out of bed. $1,940. Rent is $875. Car insurance is $94. The Civic, already old then, already ticking, needs an oil change you've been putting off for 3 weeks. After everything, you're left with $214 to get through 11 days. Your dad calls that Sunday. He doesn't ask how work is going. He asks if you're putting anything away. You tell him you will once things settle down. He doesn't push. He just says, things don't really settle down. You just get used to the chaos. You don't think about that sentence again for 2 years, but it stays somewhere. The following Monday, on a whim you can't fully explain, you open a brokerage account on your lunch break. It takes 11 minutes. You fund it with $50, money that was supposed to go toward a haircut you keep postponing. $50 into a total market index fund. That's it. That's the whole event. No music swells. Nothing changes about how your apartment looks or how your car sounds when it starts. But the following Friday, you do it again. $50. It's not a plan yet. It's barely a habit. It's just a number that leaves before you can talk yourself out of it. By December, the account holds $612. You check it more than you'd like to admit, not because it's growing fast, because it isn't, but because it's the only number in your life that only moves in one direction. At 24, $50 is not an investment strategy. It's a decision about who you're going to be when the amounts get bigger. You don't know that yet. You just know it's easier to keep going than to explain to yourself why you'd stop. There's a specific kind of tired that comes with being broke in your 20s. Not dramatic, not the kind that shows up in a movie. It's the tired of doing math in the grocery store aisle, quietly, item by item, before you get to the register. $3.29 for eggs. $4.19 for the good bread instead of $2.49 for the other bread. You put the good bread back. Nobody sees you do it. That's the part nobody films. Your friend Priya, you haven't met her yet, that's still 2 years away, later tells you she did the same thing in a different aisle, in a different city, the same year. Being broke, it turns out, looks almost identical no matter whose life it's happening in. 2 years pass the way most years do, without a single day that feels like a turning point. You get a raise. $3,100 more a year, phrased in an email with the subject line, compensation update, the kind of email you read twice standing in the break room, coffee going cold in your hand. You do the obvious thing and the boring thing at the same time. You raise your contribution by exactly the amount of the raise before the money ever touches your checking account. $75 a paycheck becomes $125. You never see the difference because you never let yourself see it. Marcus gets a similar raise that spring. He leases a 2019 Tundra the following week. You don't judge him for it. He's not reckless. He works hard, he likes his truck, and for 3 years it's made him happy pulling into that parking lot. That's what makes the decision hard to explain to people who think wealth is about being smarter than everyone else. You weren't smarter. You just stopped changing the system every time your income did. There's a woman 2 cubicles over named Denise, closing in on 60, who's worked in accounts payable longer than you've been an adult. One Tuesday, waiting for the same printer, she glances at the Civic's key fob clipped to your belt loop and says, without much ceremony, "The car doesn't know what your net worth is, neither does anyone else, unless you tell them." Then the printer finishes, and she walks off with her folder. You think about that sentence for exactly 4 seconds before the workday swallows it. You don't clock it as advice. It doesn't feel like advice. It feels like a woman making a comment about a key fob. The account crosses $9,400 that October, then $18,700 the following June. Nothing about it feels dramatic, because nothing about depositing $125 a paycheck into an index fund is dramatic. There's no ceremony to it. Nobody throws a party at $18,700. Nobody notices at all. That's the part nobody tells you about this stage. It's not hard because it requires willpower. It's hard because it requires doing something remarkable by doing something extremely unremarkable over and over for years with no evidence yet that it's working. By 27, the number is $34,200. The Civic now has 129,000 miles on it and a crack in the windshield from a rock on the interstate that you've decided not to fix. Here's the mechanism underneath all of it. The part that never gets a scene of its own because it happens in the background of every other scene. The $18,700 isn't just $18,700 you put in. Most of it is money that was never yours to spend in the first place because it left before you could see it. And a smaller but growing piece of it is money the market added on its own, quietly, compounding on top of money that was already compounding. 2 years ago, growth was a rounding error. This year, it's a real number, sitting next to your contributions on the same statement, starting to look less like a footnote. Marcus's truck payment, by comparison, is money leaving in the same automated way yours does, except his leaves towards something that's worth less every year he owns it. Same discipline, same automation, opposite direction. Neither of you talks about it that way. You just both keep making the same decision every 2 weeks, without discussing it, without judging each other for it. You think the hard part is getting the number to grow. It isn't. You're 29 when the account crosses $100,000 on a Sunday morning, while you're still in bed scrolling before your alarm goes off. You sit up, you look at it again. You expect to feel something enormous. You don't. You feel the same way you felt looking at $34,200, maybe slightly more awake. That week, almost as if the universe wants to test the number immediately, 2 things happen within 4 days of each other. First, the market drops 9% in 11 trading days over inflation fears. Your $100,000 becomes $91,000, becomes $88,400 before you stop refreshing the app. Marcus asks if you're getting killed out there, half joking, the way people ask about things they've heard about but don't watch closely. You say you're fine. You are, mostly. Your hands are a little cold anyway. Second, your lease is up on the Civic. Not a lease, you own it outright, but the transmission starts making a sound on cold mornings that you know somewhere in your body means money. Around the same time, a friend of a friend is selling a 2021 Tacoma, low miles, clean title, $34,000. You sit in the Marathon parking lot one morning, the same pump you'll be standing at years later, running the numbers on your phone. $34,000 financed at a reasonable rate is about $610 a month. You can afford it. Your income supports it. Nobody would blink. You don't buy it, not because trucks are irresponsible. Marcus's truck hasn't ruined his life. It's because you do one more calculation, almost by accident. $610 a month, invested instead at a historical long-run average return, becomes something in the neighborhood of $180,000 over 15 years. Not guaranteed, not linear. But the shape of it is enough. You keep the Civic. You get the transmission looked at. It's a sensor, not the transmission. $340. You feel almost embarrassed at how relieved you are. The market recovers over the following 4 months, the way it usually does, on no particular schedule and with no particular announcement. The account passes $100,000 again in March, then keeps going, past it, like the dip was something that happened to a different number entirely. There's a version of this story where you buy the Tacoma. It's not a stupid version. $610 a month against a $71,000 salary is a defensible decision by almost any standard a bank would use. Nobody would have called you reckless. Your parents wouldn't have said anything. That's what makes the choice hard to explain later. There was no wrong answer sitting there in the parking lot, just two different 10 years from now versions of your life, and only one of you got to happen. You thought the hard part was reaching $100,000. It wasn't. The hard part was standing in that parking lot with the Tacoma on your screen and choosing, again, not to change anything. At 32, something starts happening in the account that has nothing to do with what you're depositing. You still put in $340 a paycheck. Your contribution has crept up twice since the transmission scare, once after a promotion, once just because you decided to. But some months now, the account grows by more than your contributions and your salary combined would explain. You do the math on a Tuesday night. Kitchen table, laptop open, the same kitchen table from the old apartment, just in a slightly bigger apartment now. Your contributions that year, $8,840. The account's growth that year, $31,600. The portfolio made almost 4 times what you put into it. Not every year will look like that. You know that. You've read enough to know markets don't move in straight lines. But this year, the money worked harder than you did, and it didn't clock in, didn't sit in traffic, didn't answer a single email. This is the part that's difficult to explain to people who haven't watched it happen slowly. It's not that you got rich overnight. It's that the relationship reversed. For years, you were the only engine. Now there are 2 engines, and one of them never gets tired. That winter, the water heater dies. $1,650 to replace, cash, same day. 3 years ago, that number would have required a plan, a credit card, a payment schedule, a bad week. Now it requires a transfer and a mildly annoyed phone call to the plumber about scheduling. The emergency doesn't feel like an emergency anymore. It feels like an inconvenience with a receipt. Tyler, a guy you know from your old apartment complex, sells real estate now and drives a leased Range Rover that turns more heads than Marcus's Tundra ever did. He posts about closings. He looks, from the outside, like the version of success you were told to want at 24. You run into him at a mutual friend's cookout that August, and somewhere between the second beer and the burgers, he mentions, casually, like it's nothing, that a slow quarter almost meant missing the lease payment. He laughs when he says it. You don't laugh. You just nod. You don't feel superior. That's not the emotion. It's something closer to recognition. The understanding that 2 people can look completely different on paper and be standing on completely different ground, and nobody at the cookout would be able to tell which one of you is which. Your salary that year is $71,000. Your portfolio's growth that year is $31,600 and rising. You start noticing the lines whenever you glance at the numbers, the way you'd notice 2 cars merging toward the same lane. Salary line, mostly flat, ticking up a little each year with raises and cost of living adjustments. Growth line, jagged, unpredictable month to month, but climbing overall, steeper than the other one, gaining on it in a way that used to feel theoretical and now feels like something with a date attached, even if you don't know the date yet. Denise retires that spring, 3 days before her 61st birthday, and the office throws her the kind of low-key party offices throw. Sheet cake, a card everyone signs, someone's Bluetooth speaker playing something nobody chose. On her way out, she stops by your desk with her box of desk plants and picture frames balanced on one hip. "You still driving that same car?" she asks. "You say you are." She nods, like that answers a question she'd been quietly asking for years, and doesn't say anything else about it. She doesn't need to. The lines are getting close to crossing. You don't know yet what it will feel like when they do. At 34, your manager offers you a promotion. More money, $9,200 more a year, but also a second location to oversee, 45 minutes further, and Saturdays twice a month. 3 years ago, you'd have taken it without thinking twice. The $9,200 would have mattered enormously. Now you sit with the offer for 4 days, which surprises your manager more than the eventual answer does. You turn it down. Not because the money doesn't matter. It does. It always will. In some ways, it matters more now because you understand exactly what it compounds into. You turn it down because the portfolio, sitting at $412,000 that spring, is generating something close to $24,000 a year on its own, and the 2 extra Saturdays a month are worth more to you than the raise would be. This is the part nobody warns you is coming. Freedom doesn't announce itself as a lottery win. It shows up as a Tuesday where you say no to something reasonable for reasons that would have sounded insane to you 5 years earlier. Your girlfriend, Priya, notices before you say anything about it. She's known you for 2 years, long enough to remember the version of you that flinched at a $60 dinner. One night she asks, half joking, why you still drive that car now that she knows, because you finally told her the number, sitting on the couch, almost apologetically, like you were confessing something, what the account actually holds. You tell her the Civic isn't about the money anymore. It stopped being about the money a while ago. Somewhere in the last 10 years, it turned into something closer to a boundary. Proof that you get to decide what your life looks like, instead of your bank balance or somebody else's opinion of your bank balance deciding for you. She doesn't fully get it that night. She gets it 3 months later when her hours get cut at the clinic, and, for the first time in her adult life, she isn't afraid of the number in her checking account, because yours can absorb the gap without either of you discussing it twice. That's the freedom nobody photographs for social media. Not a beach. Not a car reveal video. A Tuesday where a bad month doesn't become a crisis. At 36, the portfolio crosses $700,000, and something unexpected happens. You stop telling people things are going well, and you start noticing that some people can't quite hear it if you do. An old friend from college, someone you used to split rent-cheap apartments with, reaches out after years of silence, and the conversation is warm until money comes up. His, specifically, a job loss, a stretch of bad luck that isn't his fault. You want to help. You do help, quietly, a number that would have felt impossible at 24 and now barely moves the account. But something in the friendship shifts afterward. He gets quieter. You get more careful about what you mention. Marcus, still at the same company, still driving a truck, a newer one now, the Tundra traded for something bigger, asks you one Friday, not unkindly, how you seem so relaxed about money all the time. You don't have a clean answer. You've thought about explaining the 15 years of $50 and $75 and $125 leaving your account before you could talk yourself out of it, the Tacoma you didn't buy, the promotion you turned down. It sounds, even to you, like a story that requires more patience than a Friday afternoon in a break room allows. There's a specific kind of quiet that comes with this stage that nobody mentions in the beginning, when $50 feels like the hardest part. It isn't loneliness exactly. It's more like standing slightly outside a conversation you used to be fully inside, not because you changed how you talk to people, but because the math underneath your life stopped matching theirs, and math you can't say out loud is hard to be close to people around. You think, more than once that year, about Denise and the key fob. The car doesn't know what your net worth is, neither does anyone else, unless you tell them. You understand now that she wasn't talking about the car. She was telling you, in the only way a woman 2 cubicles over gets to tell a 27-year-old anything, that the quiet version of this life is the one that actually holds. The version where nobody claps. The version where the biggest events of your financial life happen on ordinary Sundays, in bed, before your alarm goes off, and nobody in the room even knows it's happening. That's the cost nobody warns you about. Not danger, not misery. Just distance. Small, mostly manageable, occasionally strange, between the life you're actually living and the life the people around you assume you're living, because you never gave them a reason to assume otherwise. You wouldn't trade it back. That's the part that surprises you most. It's 6:58 on a Thursday morning, and you're standing at Pump 4 of the marathon on Route 9 again. A different Thursday, Years later, watching the numbers climb past $41 this time because gas got more expensive and you didn't. The Civic is still the Civic. Slightly louder now, slightly more embarrassing to certain people, though those people have gotten harder to care about. The check engine light comes and goes, and you've made peace with not always knowing why. Marcus isn't in the parking lot this particular morning, but somebody like him is, in a truck like his, and you don't feel the old flicker of comparison you used to feel at 24. Not because you've become a better person, because the question that flicker used to ask, "Can I afford that?" got answered a long time ago and stopped being interesting. Your portfolio is worth more than most of the houses on the street you grew up on. Nobody at this gas station knows that, including the version of you standing here right now who still just feels like someone getting gas before work. That's the contradiction the whole story was built on. You chose wealth over looking rich, and the strangest part is how invisible that choice turned out to be. No luxury car, no renovation, no announcement. Just a 15-year habit of $50, repeated until the math changed, and then repeated a while longer after that, because by then, it wasn't really a decision anymore. It was just who you'd become. The Civic starts. You pull out of the marathon and merge onto Route 9, toward a job you no longer need, in a car nobody's impressed by, carrying a number that would surprise every single person who's ever glanced at you in a parking lot and made a quiet assumption. You don't correct them. You never do. If this story made you think differently about the difference between looking wealthy and actually being wealthy, hit like and subscribe for more stories like this one. And I'm curious, would you have bought the truck or kept the Civic? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.